Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Bridges of Belonging. This is conversation number 9, and I'm so excited for today's conversation. Given our little pre-conversation today, I just know it's going to be full of energy and excitement and just a really thoroughly dynamic presentation today. I do want to kick off by just asking those that are not speaking to mute themselves, and also to just be aware that you are, it is being recorded, so you will be on camera if you have your camera on. And then I want to start with a territory acknowledgement. I have the distinct pleasure of being a guest here in Victoria on Coast Salish territory, home of the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations. And just really, really grateful to be in such an amazing place and for their stewardship of the lands over centuries, so that I have a safe place for me and my family to be, especially during these COVID times. So just really grateful. This is a really special day because I get to be joined by two just unbelievably cool humans who I will introduce to you in just a moment. But Tracy and Archie are just two of my most enthusiastic, fun people to hang out with. And so this is going to be really great. I always kick off with a bit of a reading to introduce ourselves. So we're going to start with something from Untamed by Glennon Doyle today. And if you haven't read this book, it's pretty fun. And it just kind of brings you back to sort of some of the constructs that society puts on us and how we can look at ways to kind of rethink how we exist in the world. So I will read this to kick us off. Perhaps imagination is not where we go to escape reality, but where we go to remember it. Perhaps when we want to know the original plans for our lives, families, world, we should consult not what's in front of us, but what's inside us. Imagination is how personal and worldwide revolutions begin. I have a dream, said Martin Luther King Jr. Dreaming, after all, is a form of planning, said Gloria Steinem. In order to move our culture forward, revolutionaries have had to speak and plan from the unseen order inside them. For those of us who are not consulted in the building of the visible order, igniting our imagination is the only way to see beyond what is created to leave us out. If those who are not part of the building of reality only consult reality for possibilities, reality will never change. We will keep shuffling and competing for the seat at their table instead of building our own tables. We will keep banging our heads on the glass ceilings instead of pitching our own huge tent outside. We will remain caged by our world instead of taking our rightful place as co-creators of it. Each of us was born to bring forth something that has never existed, a way of being, a family, an idea, art, a community, something brand new. We are all here to fully introduce ourselves, to impose ourselves and ideas and thoughts and dreams onto the world, leaving it changed forever by those who are and what we bring forth from our depths. So we cannot contort ourselves to fit into the visible order. We must unleash ourselves and watch the world reorder itself in front of our eyes. That just seemed really fitting for the speakers we have today, because both of them just create this beautiful space around them and the opportunity for others to join them and be part of their energy and enthusiasm and vibrancy for life. And so that one just really struck me. So I'm going to kick us off by introducing our two speakers. So Archie Allison, again, one of my favorite people. He constantly sends me little texts saying how awesome I am, so I really do love that as well about him. Archie began his career working with persons with disabilities when he was hired as a program instructor at Variety Village in 1984. Throughout his years at Variety, he continued his studies and his training and is currently the Director of Access and Awareness at Variety Village. He's a tireless advocate for people of all ages and abilities. His passion is infectious, and his success in the areas of accessibility, integration, and independence has set him apart from everyone else in the field. During his career at Variety Village, Archie has assisted in creating many programs for children with disabilities. These programs focus on providing all children, regardless of their abilities, a barrier-free environment and curriculum in which to play. He's been a staunch advocate of inclusive participation and has been widely recognized for his incredible work. Tracy is a best-selling author on Amazon and the publisher of the book Unstoppable You, Delivering the Limitless Secret, endorsed by A Cup of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And you can grab your copy online today. She's a TV host and is the #1 international mega, which is an international mega success, and a TEDx speaker who has spoken in over 40 countries. She shared the stage at events with Dr. Phil, Jane Fonda, Mark Wahlberg, Michael Douglas, Mel Gibson, John Travolta, and dozens more A-listers. Her mind-blowing story always gets standing ovations, pushing audiences out of their limitation zones to taking action. To top it off, if she's not incredible enough in business, as a humanitarian and as she's a World Cup sailor and a mountain climber. And she was also born a 4-way amputee with no hands and no legs, no problem. So welcome Tracy and Alice and Archie. Really looking forward to today, and Tracy is going to kick us off.
Oh my goodness, Andrea, what a beautiful introduction. And it's so funny. You know, I started my Unstoppable Tracy when I got to climb the Himalayas as a teenager, and the first, and I still think the only 4-way amputee to climb the Himalayas. And I started my training for that with Archie out of Variety Village before we even left for Himalayas. So the whole sort of journey of sailing and skiing and flying and skydiving and scuba diving and then working with Air Canada and Shoppers and Uber, all of this journey with March of Dimes, Easter Seals, and massively, most credibly, Variety Village, all started with the magnificent Archie. And so I'm so honored to be here, Unstoppable Tracy, celebrating Unstoppable You with Inclusion Incorporated and Variety Village and all our listeners today, thanks to Archie instilling that unstoppableness in me way back as a teenager, even though he was only a couple years older than me. Only a couple years.
That's awesome, Tracy. What a great way to kick us off. Do you want to share a little bit more about how you came to know Archie and a little bit about sort of some of your experiences?
Sure. So we being Kathy Smart is my mentor, somebody I looked up to my entire life. And Kathy and I were training out of Variety Village, and kind of how I started with Archie. And Archie and I have parallel life paths, and that we both started at Centennial College and in recreation. It was then called Recreation Leadership Studies. And then we both went on to be teachers with Recreation and Leisure Studies. And Archie has been kind enough to pull me in with Centennial. And with Kathy, I started sailing. And you know, when I started sailing, I kept falling out of a boat. You know, I'm top heavy without my legs and without my hands. And it was people like Kathy and Archie that was like, just climb back in, right? And so I failed that first summer, and I figured out a way how to get back in, but not that first summer. And pretty much everything, skiing, Air Canada, flying, skydiving, scuba diving, everything always seemed to start with no, even kindergarten. And it's the trick of not letting no, N-O, stop you. It's just that I don't know, K-N-O-W, or the person telling me no doesn't know, K-N-O-W. And I grew up to be a World Cup sailor. And my biggest claim to fame was December 2015. I was in Melbourne, Australia at a Olympic class regatta. And there was 27 Viking-like big, strong, muscular gentlemen and 3 strong, powerful women. And even though there were 30 sailors with hands on that start line. I was the only one with no hands, no legs. And that was a World Cup regatta, a qualifier for the Olympics. And I started out my first summer failing, but I ended up 2015 December, 7th out of 30 in a World Cup regatta. And that's all from my journey with Variety Village being one of those initial places that believed in me. You know, when I was a little girl, 8 years old, 6 years old, 11 years old, I went to AMP camp. And I don't know that Variety Village would call it AMP camp anymore. It's not appropriate, but that's what it was called when I was little. And they taught me how to tie shoelaces and swim. And that's where it all started.
Oh, that's awesome. Archie, I'm going to flip it over to you to give our listeners a bit more of an introduction about you and your journey and how you got to Variety Village and the work you do each day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Tracy. I'm very lucky to be here today, and I'm super excited to always work with Andrea and Tracy any chance I get. For those of you who haven't met Andrea yet, you have to meet her and you have to know her because she gets you involved in things you don't think you'd get involved in, but really motivates you to kind of find excellence, find value, and find purpose in so many different things you can do. So thank you, Andrea, for that. Unstoppable Tracy, well, what can I say? We've known each other for over 30 years, grown up together, watched each other kind of learn and kind of challenge each other in different areas. And I'm constantly learning from you, constantly growing from all the things you teach me, and constantly loving every moment we get to hang out together. So it's always fun to work together. It's always good. For me, my journey started at Variety Village by a fluke. I had a co-op teacher in grade 12 that saw me. I was very introverted, very quiet, lots of great friends, and didn't always love school. But the co-op teacher I had really kind of encouraged me to start at Variety Village. I had a very different career path. I was looking at working in the field of art therapy. I like art, and I drew and took photography and really kind of appreciated the arts for a long time. My final placement of the year was across the street, across the parking lot from my high school at Variety Village. And the first day I walked in, I was like, I don't really know anything about what I'm doing at this point, because most of my studies have been in the field of art. On my first week here at Variety Village, where I am now, I fell in love with the place. I can't explain in words what happened. And it was more than just the place, it was the people. And the people like Steve Bialois and Debbie Lowe and Faye Blackwood, and so many people that are still involved today in creating inclusive opportunities, really kind of changed the way I saw myself and who I was and what I wanted to do. And I've been here ever since. And now we are going into my 37th year of working here. And there's not a day that I don't love coming to work. There's not a day that I don't enjoy everything I do. And there's not a day where I don't find questions in myself and others too, where trying to find ways to get people to feel like they belong, to be active, to be involved, and to really appreciate all the great things you can do.
Oh, that's awesome. You look really good for only being 37 years old. I know you said you started in high school, but I'm thinking it was actually when you were in diapers. So Archie, I'm going to stay on you for a second. You've just kind of spoken a little bit about sort of what matters for you in terms of creating some of those opportunities for people to be active and have a space where they can come and be who they are and work with you to kind of figure out what's going to best support them. So tell us a little bit about sort of your learning in getting there and in figuring out, what does Variety Village need? How do you create those opportunities for people who come there?
I think the biggest lesson for me that I've learned is to listen. We tend to kind of think that everybody wants to be involved and everybody wants to be part of something and everybody can be actively included in what they do very easily. But there's a lot of time that gets invested by people in their thoughts, right? Things that you would perceive as a barrier, things that you perceive as a challenge, things that you kind of expect or that could limit you in your participation. So for me, my biggest learning here has been to listen. And for those of you who know me, I'm probably not the biggest talker in the room. I would much prefer to listen to the other things that people have to say, really kind of pay attention to what people are doing and try and focus. I like to move very fast and like to do a lot of things too. So for me, focus and attention to listening are kind of my key principles of what I like to do in a day-to-day scenario. When I'm here at Variety Village, one of the things that I find most fascinating is like how people got here. So whether it's a diagnosis or an injury or living in the community and trying to find out what this is all about, I found that being here, when people actually get here, there was a lot more that was involved before they actually came through our doors. There was a lot more thought process that happened, and a lot more thinking than we were prepared to know ourselves. And as I get to know the people, I'm really excited to become friends with so many, and there's so many people on this. I keep seeing all these names pop up, and I'm so excited to see so many people that influence me every day with the things they teach me. I see Lauren and Dawn and Emily and Kathy and Steve and Carol and Marjorie. Like, there's so many people there that I learn from all the time, and by listening and hearing what they have to say and what they have to share, I feel like it's made me more aware of who I am, who I'm growing to be, and what I can do to support community and people themselves.
That's fantastic. I love that, listening and just really kind of taking the time to deeply understand what people's journeys and experiences have been, so that you can figure out the best ways to support them. Tracy, I'm going to flip it over to you. You went to Variety Village. You obviously kind of found a place and a space there. Tell us a little bit about how that's influenced, and experiences like that have influenced your journey and the work you're doing and the environments and opportunities you create.
I think self-advocacy is huge. And I think that people have the best intentions, and even in reflection of themselves, we have naysayers. Sometimes we wonder, can I do it? Or others, people looking and have those best intentions. And I think it's really important that you embrace that possibility that you can do it, even if you don't know how. And I think that that's a lesson I learned early with Variety Village, is even though we don't know how, it doesn't mean it's not going to work. It means you jump in and you figure it out. And I think a lot of people, we believe in that secret where you believe it, you can do it. And what I've learned about some suicide research and a lot of the bullying of kids that end up leaving school is, the crux of it is they've been told by many, including psychologists, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it no matter what. And we think it's a magic wand, and it's not. It's a two-part piece. You've got to believe you can do it. But what you learn at Variety Village, and what I've learned through Variety Village, is that, and then you do whatever it takes to make it happen, right? You try again, right? We had no idea how I would ski, right? And I embraced the possibility, even though the instructors were saying, I'm sorry, I don't think we can help Tracy. And I'm so lucky that Mom learned early in her negotiation skills to say, that's okay, no problem. Can we just try? And if it doesn't work out, no worries. And so it would help break through barriers of no in the beginning, in that softer 70s way, in that less entitled way. You know, now we've got the Lauren McDonalds that are lawyers that can advocate that you have every right to. And I see you're laughing in the background. But before then, there wasn't those laws in place. And so with skiing, it was giving them that freedom that if they failed, it wasn't about failure, it was just about trying. And so we get out there and I'm sitting on a bench and my legs are off, and my ski instructor is a big, tall, strong fella like our Archie. And I'm looking over at his feet, and I'm inappropriately, my 11-year-old brain is looking at his feet and thinking, holy cow, big feet, right? And then I got a light bulb. He's got big feet. Like, I can put my legs, which are stumps, right there, they end above knee, and they kind of look like my arm, but on my thighs. I can put my thighs in his men's ski boots. And I still face planted. So without any feet, we tried again, and we turned them around, and I ended up skiing with men's ski boots backwards. But we weren't going to figure that out on my couch. right? I had to get out there and just try to ski. And I wasn't going to be able to Google no arms, no legs and skiing, right? There weren't options, and there wasn't the same Google or Facebook or any of those tools way back when. And that sort of can do, give it a go, that came from Variety Village, right? And when several years later, 8 years later, when we were trying to figure out climbing in the Himalayas, you know, Variety Village had a little bit of a climbing wall and a climbing experiential to get it started and figure it out. And we just realized, okay, my limbs are shorter, but there's no reason why I can't climb, right? We just need to find closer climbing holes. And boots, like what's going to protect my knees? What's going to protect my stumps? And so it drove me to then find a stump cover solution, but not a you can't do it solution. And so embrace that possibility, even when you don't know how. And the only difference with failure and success is one more try, right? We know Walt Disney failed 9 times. And now even, and failed meaning bankruptcy. Like try to get a loan when you've been bankrupt 9 times. But he didn't give up. And when you've got Archie smiling at you, you don't want to give up either. And so I'm very, very grateful for that strong rooted lessons that I got out of Variety Village. And I don't do it alone, right? I've got lifelines like Dawn that's on here, and Lauren that's on here, and Kathy Price and Catherine Strutt, and have a lot of lifelines on this call today. And now, Andrea.
You've had me since 2015 when we sat at a table together. I was like, you're blowing my mind, woman.
Andrea!
I saw in the chat box that Lauren put in challenging the default position of no. And I think, you know, what you just spoke to, Tracy, is so important. And, you know, that was probably one of my earliest lessons in working in the disability space was if you start with yes, there's all sorts of creative options around figuring out how you're going to move that work forward. And so, you know, I'm so grateful for those that have taught me, but such an opportunity to kind of share with our audience that starting with yes just opens the door and creates pathways forward. You never know where those pathways are going to lead or who they're going to lead you to or what great experiences. So that was a great reminder. So Tracy, we've spoken quite a bit about sort of your space and place at Variety Village and how that influenced your journey. Tell us what it was about sort of being there and connecting there that made you feel like you belonged.
I think, you know, I went to an able-bodied school and I'm so glad that I did. And that was another no, where they said, I'm sorry, you can't go to this school, and needed that counteroffer no conversation. But I think what was valuable about Variety Village is that although it's, you know, it's still 55% able-bodied people there at Variety Village, but it creates this space of everyone included, you know, nobody left behind. And so having that comfort where I also got to see some peers, I think gave me that initial symbolic segregation of sorts of where I could be comfortable in a place with my legs off, right? I didn't, you know, when I was in elementary school, my legs had covers, right? There's stuffing styrofoam covers. And it was very important that my mom, you know, they gave me a hook for my arm, and mom's like, well, don't, you know, she's a baby. I don't want her to have a hook. Can't you make a little hand? It was my mom pushing them for normalcy that created the very first baby myoelectric hand. Was for me at Hugh McMillan Medical Center, the then called Ontario Crippled Children's Center. And so certainly society had this normalcy place, but Variety Village created a place where, well, kids are in their chairs, kids are transferring out of the chairs, kids are taking their arms and their legs off to be able to participate in different sports or activities or learn in different ways in the swimming pool, for example. And so I often grapple with the place of segregation and complete inclusion, because it certainly was at a young age, a confidence booster, but I think I'm glad that my school environment was an able-bodied environment. I'm glad that it was a small piece of my bigger puzzle, because I think I needed to learn to be able to take my legs off and swim anywhere, right? And then ultimately, because I could swim, I could fall out of a boat, right? You needed to be able to swim to be allowed in the boat. And because I could fall out of a boat, I could swim, or I could swim because I could fall out of a boat. And then I could learn to sail, and then I could learn to teach sailing. And then because I taught sailing, I got into teachers college with life experience of teaching sailing. And so because I got into teachers college, I ended up teaching in Uganda, Jamaica, Nepal, Mexico, right, all around the world. But that wasn't without having a segregated confidence builder at Variety Village for a small piece, to realize I don't need this segregation, right? I don't have to do that. But it was just enough to build my confidence so that I could leap into bigger everyday expectation of myself. And then advocate to others that even though they couldn't see it, they're like, oh, she's not going to swim. Oh, she's not going to sail. Oh, I'm sorry, scuba diving, never, but we're happy to hold you and float you, or we're happy to give you a joy ride. Well, of course, that isn't my personality, as Archie is so well enough to know, and many of you on this call, right? I don't want a joy ride. I want to be the driver. I want to be the leader. I want to be the one that's skyrocketing. And so I am grateful for that small piece. And Variety Village pushes that, right? I think Variety Village is constantly advocating. This is everyone, everywhere. Everyone's included. This is, 55% are people who are able-bodied. This isn't a place specifically for people with disabilities.
That's fantastic. Who knew this was going to be like an infomercial for Variety Village?
I know. I have a little bit of a big love, big heart, Variety heart on for Archie.
I know. I love it. I'm just teasing. Archie, I'm going to flip it over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about sort of spaces, places, experiences of your journey in belonging?
Like I said, the first day I came into Variety Village, I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, and who knew that many years later I'd still be coming through these doors. But it wasn't so much the building, it was the people in the building. And like the people that are on this call today, there's something that happens when you get around a group of people that make you feel motivated, make you feel welcome, make you feel involved, regardless of what they know about you. They create a sense of environment where you think, I feel okay. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I ever really belonged in any group when I was younger. I kind of marched my own drum, and much to my family's disappointment in a lot of cases, kind of did my own thing. At the same time, when you come to a place like Variety Village and you meet the people that come through our doors, and not necessarily they're here every day, but the people you get to meet, like all the people on this call, pretty much, you have a chance to kind of get to know more about them, right? And the things they're doing and the things that make life exciting. And Matt Greenwood and Tammy are on the call, and I can see them now, and I'm thinking, I watch what they do all the time, and I think, how did you get so many people involved, and how come you make it so exciting, and how come after 18 hours of being on the floor promoting programs for people with all abilities, you still have that energy to kind of keep going, right? And then you remind yourself that when you're surrounded by people that make you feel that way, you want to do it too, right? So Kathy Schmitt, I know you'll remember this, because in leadership camps 1,000 years ago, when I started work, I had no idea what I was doing, not a clue. I was learning kind of as I went and trying to pretend like I knew what I was doing, but I was really basing my leadership style on the support from all the people in my community and all the people that helped me understand how to do things better. And I continue to do that today. I surround myself with people that make you feel excited about things, that challenge you about things, that make you kind of honest in your own realities of who you are as a person. And Chris Power, I'm going to put you on the spot. Chris Power is also an incredible speaker and a veteran who's really got me thinking about how we create environments where everybody feels good and everybody feels welcome and everybody feels excited what they do. I have an incredible difficult time with balance, as almost everyone on this call can tell you. I will work as many hours as I can because I actually love what I do. I don't take a lot of time for me in that process. And with COVID-19, I was kind of forced to take some time and actually think about the things that I'm doing or how I'm doing. And it's really kind of given me a chance to reflect and think about what I'm going to do in the future that could be more effective, that could be more welcoming, that could create more opportunities for more people. And it's really kind of promoted that independence in my mind to grow, right? So I think the biggest thing that I can share is that the people around you, if you surround yourself with people like that are on this call today, in a lot of cases, you really motivate yourself to do more with your own self and learn more about you and grow yourself individually.
Awesome. I certainly would always describe you as having a growth mindset. And so what I just heard is that you don't necessarily see that in yourself, right? Or you didn't going into COVID, but I certainly always experience that with you, because you do start with yes, and you look at how, and you're really open to who people are and what they need and how they show up, and just learning so much about them. So I'm going to stay with you for a minute, Archie. Tell us a little bit about times when you didn't belong, or you see people that show up in your programs that feel like they don't belong, and sort of what your approach to that is, and how you continue to kind of work with them to navigate, or work with yourself to navigate some of that.
I asked this question to my family last night, kind of in preparation for the question about not belonging and to feel like you didn't belong. And my family was very quick to remind me of the many things I didn't belong in and thought I did. Going back to the story that they shared that I was funny was when we were younger, there was a thing called a 100-kilometer club. And all the kids in school used to run, and you would run through the schoolyard and down the hill and through the sewage pipes and around the back and through the subway tracks around. And you would think today you would never have people do that. But I was always last. I never ever finished in the top 5 or 10 or 500. I was always last. And I was one of the few people to actually get all the 100 kilometers signed off. And my family said to me, we knew at that point that you were not going to settle. You were not going to take something that was defeating to you, that made you feel like you were less than, and make it you. So going back that far, that I didn't remember until they brought up the story, and then they'll kind of have a laugh at my expense. But it was a reminder that I don't feel like I ever really belonged, and I always felt like I was never comfortable with trying to fit in either. I never really wanted to be like everybody else, or act like everybody else, or do like everybody else did. So I often took kind of journeys and adventures that maybe didn't fit in with everybody else that I knew, or maybe weren't things that were popular at the time, but it made me, right, in a lot of cases. So I think in meeting the people that I meet today, and yesterday and all the years ago, the story that I'm most kind of excited about is that journey of when people first arrived, like how you got here and what you had to go through or think through before you got to this point. So working here at Variety Village, like I get to meet so many incredible people every day. And so many individuals come with such incredible stories of triumph, and so many people come with incredible stories of challenges that I don't know if I would be able to handle the same way they have to get where they are today. So again, I kind of count it as a blessing, and it reminds me of how appreciative I am for the people around me and the people I get to meet, because I think the biggest feeling that people want is to be accepted, like to feel like it's okay to be you. And we often kind of look at our society that people are supposed to look and act and behave a certain way. The reality is don't do it. It's overrated. You don't want to do it. Have fun being you and enjoy it. I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned.
Yeah, no, that's such a powerful reflection around sort of the not having that desire to fit in, but finding that place where you belong, and appreciating that everyone is different, and we don't need to conform to a certain thing or way of being in order to figure out where we do belong. It's more of kind of finding your people and finding your place, and society creating those spaces and places. And I mean, as you know, that's really why we started these conversations, was like to explore that and have those discussions and surface some of those pieces, so that as leaders and people in our communities, we can help facilitate some of that happening. So Tracy, I'm going to flip that same question over to you around not belonging, and what that experience was like for you, and what that sort of meant, and how you navigated.
I'm hoping most of you haven't heard this story of couple of my stories have gone viral and it's out there. But one of my big not belonging stories was on my front lawn. I grew up in affordable housing, and there was a lot of gravel in between the small homes, and I didn't turn my cell phone off. So let me figure out how to silence that. There we go. Oh, no, that's not working. Okay, my poor mom doesn't understand what I've just sent her. So speaking of mom, she remembers looking out the window and seeing me crying on the lawn. And so she opened the door to find out how come I was crying on the lawn. And I said, well, there's kids over there and I want them to play over here. And I'm waving and I'm calling them over, but they're just saying mean things. And my mom said, how's that working for you? And she shut the door. And that seemed like, whoa, my mom is so mean. And some of the moms out there, they're kind of laughing, or people that get the approach. And then I a bit of more tears, and I'm thinking, well, my mom's not mean. And I got a lucky light bulb, and I realized, I had every right to be sad. It's no fun being made fun of. It's no fun being left out and they're all over there. But I could be sad and do nothing, or I could be sad and I could do something about it. And so I didn't have my legs on, and I rolled down the driveway. I saw a skateboard on the road. And so I like to say I borrowed the skateboard. And I bum hopped onto the skateboard because I didn't have my legs on. And I have one long arm. I'm missing my hands, but one of my arms is long. And so I skateboarded, and I used to skateboard a lot. My skateboarding actually came from, yet again, Variety Village. They used to have these square planks with wheels on, and you could skateboard through the halls. I think you still can, maybe. But so I jumped on a regular skateboard and stole, and I skateboarded over along the road, and then I rolled up. I was on a hill, and their house was on a hill. So I rolled up the hill on their lawn, and the kids were all kind of like, and I don't know if they were kind of like, this girl with no arms, no legs just rolled up the lawn, or, earlier the bully had said, ignore her. And I kind of ignored the bully's warning, and I showed up anyway, right? And I was petrified. I was super, super scared, right? It wasn't that I wasn't like a second away from crying in all of their faces, or avoiding and rolling away and running again, right? Or just going inside and playing by myself in the house. But even with that fear, it was just sort of like, okay, I could just keep hearing my mom. How's that working for you? How's that working for you? So I took like a deep breath, and I sat as tall as I could with my legs off, and I looked them in the eye, and I put on a fake smile, and I'm just like, hi, I'm Tracy. Can I play? And so it's sort of that stand up tall and face your fears, whether you think they want you there or not, because they've already expressed they don't want you there. And it's because they don't know, right? K-N-O-W, they just don't know. And I didn't get out there right off the bat. Like, it wasn't that easy. The bully still sort of was like taken aback. And it was that moment, like, if I had have made any excuses, like, I don't know how I'm going to play, and I don't know about Simon Says, or how I'm going to run around after you a tag, like, any excuses weren't going to get me playing. And that's kind of what he said. He's like, well, the new kids always it, all cocky. And even though I didn't know how I was going to play, I just said, okay, right? I just, we're going to figure it out. In my head, we're going to figure it out, because that's the Variety Village philosophy. We'll just figure it out. So I said, okay. And, none of those kids ran off of the lawn, right? They all ran around and stayed on the grass patch. And I don't know why they didn't run into the gravel, because then I wouldn't have been able to chase them the same way. And so I think that's sort of that sense of belonging, and when didn't you feel like belonging, and what did you do and how did it make you feel? Well, I felt like everybody else that's left out, wasn't anything to do without arms or legs. And how do you face it? With a whole lot of fear. It's not without the fear, right? And you put on a little bit of bravery where you fake it till you make it, right? And I know my mom was just a window watch away, so it wasn't total unsafe circumstance, but it's a stretch, and you got to stretch. And if my mom had walked over there and made them play with me, that would have been a whole other circumstance. It really needed to come from me. And so I think we need to be self-advocates as much as we need the incredible advocates like Inclusion Incorporated, like the Andrea who's doing this podcast. And I do think, you can hear this kindergarten story, you can hear Archie's story, you can hear the Matt Greens and the Dawns and the Chris Powers and the Laurens, like all of the Tammy, all the incredible people that are here today. But it's not about hearing it once, right? It's kind of like you put on perfume and then you jump in the shower and it washes away, right? You need to reapply it and reapply that confidence and reapply that motivation and surround yourself with all of us, right? We are better together, and we need to continually listen to each other's conversations. Like, I'm loving, for people that don't know, check out the chat button in this Zoom and look what Lauren's writing, right? She's writing some very powerful, deeper lessons, so that it's great. Archie's story is great, Tracy's story, but it's even deeper when Andrea debriefs it and Lauren chats on it, right? Like, we are better together.
Absolutely. There was a few points you made there that really struck me. One, that you actually reiterated, which was fake until you make it, which I was going to say, and then you said it. So that was perfect. Because I think, probably everyone on this can relate to a time when you've been terrified. It's like, okay, got to put on my happy smile and just go do this. And the other one that really struck me is that people don't know until they know. And so how do you help them know? And how do you approach them in a way that creates that opportunity for them to know? And so for sure, that's a key lesson that comes out of today, is just that reminder. And I remember blogging about that about a year and a half ago, just like, there's just so much. And right now, in the last month and a half, there's been so much of like what people don't know, and how do we work together to understand and listen and be better together. So yeah, just such powerful messages. Thank you so much, Tracy. Tell us a little bit about psychological safety. We talked a little bit earlier around safety and how, Variety Village has just created that safe space, but just generally, like, psychological safety, how does that show up for you, and how have you sort of either facilitated that in sort of the work you're doing to kind of pay it forward, or just in your experiences?
Andrea, I'm sorry, is that for Tracy or Archie?
Oh, no, go ahead, Tracy. I thought we'd start with you.
So psychological safety, I think that's where the everyone included comes in, and that who you surround yourself with. Like, I loved Archie's message about this. You come to the Variety Village and it's people that are just positive right off the bat with that yes mentality. And when I think about climbing, and I remember hanging off of that cliff, and I had that safety line and that lifeline, but when I was hanging off that cliff, I looked left and I looked right, and there was nobody there. Right? And right now in my apartment at the moment, I like to say I'm in between. There's nobody in this apartment, right? There's no life partner or somebody living here. So you're all alone. And so I think that psychological safety is super important. And I think we all believe that earning independence is alone, right? I'm talking about the advocacy and advocate for yourself, but earning that independence, earning that psychological safety is actually empowered by who's on your lifeline. Like, when I was hanging off that cliff, who is it? A bunch of bullies? Is it Is it somebody that's going to get tired? Is it somebody that's going to say, oh, you're so heroic, but when they're busy and something more exciting comes along, they're not there? Like, who's on my lifeline? And who's on your safety line when you're rappelling off a cliff or taking a leap in a new job or a new recreational opportunity? And you know, you joked about who knew this was going to be an advocacy for Variety Village, and it really is, right? Archie and you and Dawn is a lifeline, and Lauren is a lifeline, and Chris is a lifeline, and Tammy's a lifeline, and Catherine's like a lot of my lifelines are on this call today, which is pretty significant and telling, right? Who shows up when you put it out there? And all of you have showed up today. You are the lifelines, right? And I think that that's what's really important, is that you establish lifelines. But that takes work too, right? You joked at the very beginning about how Archie's always texting, you are awesome, you are amazing, right? And he is so great at keeping his lifelines. And that's who these lifelines are today. Dawn called me the other day, and Catherine has messaged, and Lauren is messaging, and right, all of you. I've heard from all of you during COVID, and I think that it takes work to establish a lifeline. It's a two-way street. You need to reach out as well, and you need to keep those lifelines alive, and you need to selectively choose who are your lifelines and not be one way about it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Humans, right? Finding that humanity and really connecting with people and being so grateful for all the incredible people you get to meet along your journey. So Archie, I'm going to flip that question over to you around safety and psychological safety, and sort of what do you need, and what do you create?
I think it got me thinking a lot about being your authentic self, right? How do you create a place where people feel safe being authentic, being real, being themselves? And I think, again, it goes back to that listening piece, right? And without judgment, to think that maybe I don't think the same way as you, and maybe we don't have the same skills and experiences, but to listen and really listen without kind of thinking of what you're going to say next, but think about what they want to say to you or what the person wants to say with you, without any feeling of that they're going to be mocked or discriminated against following what they've shared. And the number of people that come through our doors every day where they say, you know, I'm scared, right? I don't know. I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I feel, and I'm not happy, right? And for people to be able to say that and openly feel that without anybody judging back, it's a real feeling of trust. And I think to know that you can trust with the response and that the feeling is going to be authentic for the person creates that whole feeling around feeling good again, feeling good about being you and wanting to come back or wanting to visit with that friend again, or wanting to be part of something. And really seeking an opportunity to be right who she is, right? So they were telling a story about how she went to school and she changed her clothes in the bathroom. She wanted to look like the other kids in school. And her father went back to drop something off at school for her and saw her come out of the room. And they asked me to talk to her about it. And the funny part about it was it wasn't for me to talk about, but she was excited just to kind of explore her, like to figure out who she was and who she wanted to be and who she wanted to look like. And I think we constantly do that throughout the years. Like we were talking a bit about, Tracy touched on bullying, and you think like it doesn't stop in school, it doesn't stop in the workplace, it doesn't stop in the community. It's how we respond and how we feel with our supports around us and the people that make us feel good about being ourselves, right? So you want people to feel good about being them, you want them to be excited about being them, and you want them to know that we're all vulnerable and we share our stories so that we can actually create belonging amongst everybody.
That was beautiful. Thank you for that. I do have a question that was sent to me privately, so I won't disclose who it's from, but it's a question around impact and how you both measure impact. We know that your influence is incredible, but are there techniques that you use to measure or assess your impact? So Archie, I'm going to put you on the spot. Start with you.
Measuring impact. For me, it's just a feeling of knowing that someone leaves my presence feeling good, that they know that they feel good about being themselves, they feel authentic in who they are, and the impact is not not reflective of winning an award or getting anything like that, but just knowing the person leaves feeling better about being themselves, and that it was okay to spend time together, and it was okay to share what we shared and to enjoy it. I think my impact, that when I feel my strongest and when I feel my best, is when I can go home at night thinking the impact was good on the person that felt good about being themselves throughout the day.
Nice. That was beautiful. Tracy, what about you?
I love it to be deep and reflective like Archie. I mean, it's so true, to make a difference. I think, I avoided being a keynote speaker for a long, long time. I just wanted to sail. I just wanted to date able-bodied guys. My gender preference is men. I just wanted to go to an able-bodied school. I wanted to do able-bodied sailing. Like it was something I really avoided. But in my sailing campaign of trying to fundraise for boats and things like that, and the Toronto 2015 games, when you and I were meeting in that world, the advocacy for diversity and inclusion in the games, and was when I started to hear after a session where people would say, I've been wanting to write a book forever, and you finally made me feel like I have no excuses. What am I doing? It was before I'd written my book. It wasn't because I wrote a book. It was because they just felt like, well, if you ski and sail, I can write a book. And several people talked about, I was really contemplating suicide, and you've made me want to reach out. And I wondered if I could be a parent with a disability. Like, there was all these people that had revelations happen because through Toronto 2015, I ended up sharing my story in a bigger, broader way, in a bigger reaching way. Like, I went to 55 schools that year. Well, now I've been to well over 300 schools. And that so the bigger the reach, that kindergarten story, I was in a bar and they asked me to share the story, and some guy took his cell phone and he videotaped my kindergarten story. And then that got on a page, and then that page shared it, and then another page shared it. And that video, that kindergarten story of a free bar video recorded on a cell phone kind of viewing stage, has over 100 million views. Right? And I don't have a penny from that. I didn't pay anybody to do that. That just was sort of organic. And so impact for me now is that people find strength from sharing, as Archie so beautifully put it, vulnerability. So I'm trying to share my answers with you rather than being teachy preachy. I try to share a story with you because I think the vulnerability in a story of a real example creates impact. And yes, we're doing rah Variety Village, but what my hope is from these stories, people personalize it into their own lives and make it directly applicable to their own story, their own time they were bullied, or their own first time, or their own organizational advocacy, and that people parallel these stories and then go and share their personal vulnerable story, but not as a broken wing story, as a success story. Right? What's in common with Andrea's stories, Archie's stories, and Tracy's stories, right, is resilience, perseverance, grit. I'm trying to find who is the wonderful grit story. Lubna said grit is a cultivated trait, right? Lauren's talking about borrowing strength when needed is the key, right? We are all strengthening from each other's shared stories.
Absolutely.
That's the impact, if it causes a further story.
Yeah, and I so ascribe to, the vulnerability of sharing your story creates connection and opportunities for people to engage and to understand at a different level. And so there's such richness in that. So thank you for circling us back to that. I did see vulnerability come up earlier in the chat as well. So we have, I'm going to do one last question and kind of get you to tie it into your wrap up comments, because the hour always flies by. And so Chris has asked the question about, without going into detailed discussion about religion, wondering about each of your senses of spirituality and how, if that's played a role in overcoming challenges. So if you can maybe sort of articulate that, as well as sort of a wrap-up comment for our audience to finish us off, that would be really great. So Archie, I'm going to flip it back to you to lead us off on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Chris. I think for spirituality, for me, without going into too much detail, it came from within, and it came from a sense where I felt good about being me again, through the people that were surrounding me that made me believe in the things I believe in and the things I want to believe in. I've been very fortunate again to meet so many people that have created such an opportunity for me to learn from, that my spirituality has grown through their presence, through their conversations, and through being part of a process that's made me learn a little more about my community, my environment, and who I am as a person.
Fantastic, thank you. Tracy, I'm going to flip that same question over to you. Oh, you're on mute.
Focus me again. Recap the question.
Oh, so your journey in kind of spirituality and how that's connected you, and then a kind of a wrap-up comment as well.
So spirituality, it was pretty loaded for me a lot of my life. As a very visible disability, I had a lot of evangelistic people really want to, God will fix you if you pray. And that was tough because I felt, and still do feel, that I was born exactly the way I was meant to be, and that you were born exactly the way you were meant to be. You know, we were all born exactly the way we were meant to be. There's some, who knows, unknown reason that Archie has vertigo, but is an artist that ended up at Variety Village, and he's a very talented artist. But so we're so lucky that he strayed from his career as an artist, right? There's reasons that we are the way we are. But I later understood a bit of people's passion and where they're coming from and what their upbringing is, and how it's you don't know what you don't know, that lesson that we were teaching today. And so I was able to let that go. So I do believe in God, but very much for most of my life believed in the religions that crossed over in all the spirits. Having traveled to places like Nepal and Singapore and Uganda, there's a lot of different religions out there, but what's in common with all of them is being good to thy neighbor, and, act as if you want to be acted upon. And when you live those spirituality of rules, and I love the secret, like what you put out there, it is what you attract. You put out that positive energy. But I think it's very important that not just what you believe, but what you make happen. You can achieve it, but you have to make it happen. You have to be unstoppable and not avoid failure. And so a little bit of tough love for all of you out there, especially during this pandemic. I think this pandemic, everybody has had an impact in their lives, but I think people with disabilities and in this field, with programs and services needing to be dialed back, have also exponentially impacted the world of people with disabilities and the providers, service providers, with funding disappearing on the provider side of things. And so I can't begin to know what's going on behind your eyes, who's losing jobs, who's been laid off, who's had horrible health and other sad things happening in their life. But when I live a life of no excuses, I live a life of no limits. No excuses, no limits. So please forgive me for the tough love. I don't mean to be heartless, but when you live a life of no excuses, you live a life of no limits. And that's my closing wrap up.
Oh my gosh, what a fantastic closing message for us. Thank you for that. I noted that there's a few links going around the chat box, so I will you will get an email later today to kind of close us up and with the recording. So I will include the links that I was able to grab out of the chat box as well to share forward. So thank you to those that have shared it. I just want to deeply acknowledge and appreciate Archie and Tracy for being here today and for just your phenomenal energy and passion, and for sharing with us in such a vulnerable way who you are and what kind of drives you to do what you do. I'm just always so appreciative of time with each of you, and so I'm really glad that our audience got to share that as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I am going to wrap us up by just sharing next week. Next week on Bridges of Belonging, conversation number 10, we have Michael Linklater, who is an Indigenous 3-on-3 basketball star. He's played all over the world and has part of Team Canada. And we have Erica Gavel, who is a Paralympic athlete in wheelchair basketball on Team Canada, and also working on her PhD in spinal cord injury research. So she is, both are just going to be powerhouses. And when I invited them to join us next week, I didn't realize they already knew each other, but they do, and they're friends. And so it's going to be super fun. So anyways, that will be next week. So join us again. And thank you, thank you, thank you, Tracy and Archie. So grateful. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Take good care.
Thank you.
High five.